Merry Christmas. Oh my goodness, for me. You didn't have to do that.
You ever sit in a booth at a nice restaurant, surrounded by happy couples clinking glasses and laughing, and you just feel like a ghost, like you're haunting your own life? That was me, Julian, 38 years old, sitting in the corner of the Ember and Oak in downtown Minneapolis 3 days before Christmas. I was staring at the candle on the table, watching the flame flicker, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in my stomach that felt like a fist made of iron. I hadn't been on a date in for years, not since the icy patch on I-35 took my wife, Sarah, and left me a single dad to the most incredible, resilient 8-year-old girl named Maya. I wasn't there because I wanted to be. I was there because my best friend and business partner, Andre, had bullied me into it. "You're turning into a statue, Julian," he'd said. Scrolling through his phone on the job site, I found her. Her name is Clara. She's real, she's grounded, and she likes jazz. Just one dinner for Maya, because Maya needs to see her dad smile again. So there I was, wearing a charcoal sweater that Maya said made me look handsome like a movie star, waiting for a woman wearing, according to Andrea, emerald green scarf. And then I saw her, a woman 2 tables over, alone, sipping water, wearing a dark green scarf draped over a black dress. She looked sad, but a beautiful kind of sad, the kind that speaks of depth. I took a breath, stood up, and walked over. "Hi," I said, my voice cracking like a teenager. I think I'm the guy you're waiting for." She looked up, startled, eyes wide and brown. She hesitated, then gestured to the seat. "Please, sit." For 20 minutes, it was like the universe finally cut me a break. We talked. We really talked. I skipped the small talk about the weather and went straight to the heavy stuff. I told her about Sarah, about how hard the holidays were, about how I build custom furniture because I like fixing broken things but can't seem to fix myself. She listened with this intensity, nodding, her eyes shimmering. She told me about loss, about the silence of an empty apartment. I felt a spark, something I thought was dead and buried. Then she checked her watch, her face went pale, and she stood up. "I have to go," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. Thank you for this." And she just vanished, left me sitting there with half a story and a chest full of hope that was rapidly turning into confusion. I sat there for 10 minutes, feeling the shame creep up my neck. I'd bored her. I'd been too heavy too soon. I signaled the waitress for the check, just wanting to go home and hide under the covers. The waitress, a kind older woman named Bev, came over. "Honey, you weren't waiting for the lady in the green scarf, were you?" "Yeah," I said, dejected. "My date." Bev winced. "Sweetie, that was Mrs. Gable. She comes here every Tuesday to eat alone since her husband passed. She's deaf in one ear. She probably just thought you were being friendly. Your date called. She's stuck in the snowbank on 4th Street. I froze. The humiliation hit me like a physical slap. I had just poured my heart out to a grieving widow who probably had no idea who I was. I put my head in my hands, ready to bolt. But then the front door flew open. A gust of wind and snow swirled into the warm restaurant, and a woman stumbled in. She looked like she'd just fought a yeti and lost. Her hair was plastered to her face. Her coat was soaked through. Her boots were caked in slush. She was shivering so hard her teeth were chattering audibly. She scanned the room, locked eyes with me, and marched over, dripping water onto the hardwood floor. "I am," she wheezed, bracing herself on the table. "So incredibly sorry, my car died. Uber canceled. I ran the last 6 blocks. I'm Clara, and I am your date." I looked at her. Her mascara was running. Her nose was red. She looked like a disaster. And she was the most beautiful thing I'd seen in for years. "Sit down," I said, jumping up to help her with her coat. "You're freezing." "I promised I'd be here," she said, her voice shaking as she took the seat. "I don't break promises." That was the moment. That was the hook. We ordered hot toddies and soup, and we started over. Clara wasn't just nice. She was fierce. She told me about her life. She was raising her younger sister, Tess, who was 19 and a brilliant artist but struggled with anxiety. Their mom had taken off years ago, and Clara had stepped up, sacrificing her 20s to be a parent to a sibling. We swapped war stories of parenting, me with my 8-year-old, her with her teenager. We laughed about the Mrs. Gable mix-up until tears ran down our faces. By the time the restaurant closed, I didn't want to leave. I drove her home because her car was still a brick on 4th Street. When we pulled up to her apartment building, the silence in the car wasn't awkward. It was heavy with potential. This was unexpected, she said, looking at me. The best kind of unexpected, I replied. We didn't kiss. It was too soon, but she squeezed my hand, and that touch carried more voltage than a down power line. The next morning, I was a different guy. I woke up humming. Maya looked at me over her cereal bowl like I'd grown a second head. Did you win the lottery? Daddy, something like that. Kiddo, I grinned. How would you feel about having some company in the workshop today? See, I run a restoration business out of a converted barn on my property. Maya loves it there. I texted Clara, asking if she and Tess wanted to come over. It was bold, bringing families together on day 2. But with Christmas 5 days away, you don't waste time. They showed up an hour later. Tess was guarded, hiding behind oversized glasses and a sketchbook, eyeing me like I was a threat to her ecosystem. But Clara walked in and lit up the room. Maya, who usually takes an hour to warm up to strangers, looked at Clara, looked at the bag of peppermint bark she brought, and decided they were best friends. Can you help me sand this? Maya asked, holding up a wooden reindeer we were making. I have no idea how, Clara laughed, rolling up her sleeves, but I'm a fast learner. The afternoon was magic. Pure, unadulterated magic. I watched Clara and Maya covered in sawdust, giggling. I saw Tess sitting in the corner, initially sketching silently, but slowly drawn in by Maya's relentless curiosity. By 4 p.m., Tess was showing Maya how to shade her drawings, and Clara was looking at me over their heads with a look that said, we fit. We did this for 3 days. It was a whirlwind. Gingerbread houses that collapsed, snowball fights that got vicious, late-night talks on the porch while the kids slept. It felt like we were stitching a quilt together from mismatched patches. But the pattern was perfect. But life loves a curveball, doesn't it? Christmas Eve morning, we were in my kitchen making pancakes. The radio was playing Nat King Cole. It was perfect. Then Clara's phone rang. She looked at the screen, and the color drained from her face. She stepped onto the porch to take it. I watched her through the glass. I saw her shoulders slump. I saw her hand cover her mouth. When she came back in, the light in her eyes was gone. What's wrong? I asked, turning off the stove. That was the job, she whispered, her voice hollow. The firm in Seattle. The one I applied to 6 months ago. I didn't think I'd get it. Seattle? I asked, the word tasting like ash. That's far. It's a senior director position, Julian, she said, tears welling up. It pays double what I make now. Tess got into an art program out there, a private one we couldn't afford before. But with this salary, I could give her everything. I could finally stop scraping by. When do you have to let them know? They need me there January 2nd. I have to leave. I have to leave tomorrow to drive out and find a place. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. The smell of burnt butter filled the air. I looked at Maya, who was happily oblivious in the next room. I looked at Clara, this woman who had walked through a blizzard for me, and I knew what I had to do. I couldn't be the reason she held her sister back. I couldn't be the anchor dragging her down. You have to go, I said, my voice sounding like it belonged to a stranger. Julian, she reached for me. I stepped back. No, Clara, you've spent your life fighting for Tess. You can't stop now. We had a great few days. Maybe that's all it was supposed to be. A Christmas miracle, right? Short and sweet. I was lying. I was breaking my own heart to save hers. She looked at me, searching for a reason to stay, searching for me to fight for us. But I put up the wall. The same wall I'd built when Sarah died. She left an hour later. Maya cried. She screamed, actually. Why is she leaving? You promised she was nice. She is nice, baby, I said, holding my sobbing daughter on the floor of the hallway. But she has a life, and it's not here. Christmas Day was a blur of gray. We opened presents, but the joy was gone. It felt like the house was holding its breath. Clara and Tess were on the road, driving west, driving away from us. December 27th. The forecast called it a historic winter event. They were predicting defeat of snow in 12 hours. I was at the shop, trying to distract myself with work, when my phone buzzed. It was the school district. Due to rapidly deteriorating conditions, all school buses are returning students home early. Maya was on a field trip at the Science Museum downtown. I wasn't worried. The bus driver, Mr. Henderson, was a pro. By 2 p.m., the snow was coming down sideways. Whiteout conditions. Visibility 0. I paced the living room. 3 p.m. no bus. 4 p.m. my phone rang. It wasn't the school. It was a frantic automated message. Bus 42 has been immobilized on Interstate 94 due to a multi-car pileup. Emergency services are en route, but delayed due to weather. I dropped the phone. Interstate 94. Mile marker 12. That was the spot. The exact spot where the black ice took Sarah. It was like history was looping. A nightmare repeating itself. I grabbed my keys and ran to my truck. I slammed it into four-wheel drive and tore out of the driveway. But the roads were a parking lot. Abandoned cars everywhere. I got 3 miles before a state trooper waved me down. Roads closed, sir. Nobody gets through. My daughter is on that bus. I screamed over the wind, fighting the officer who was physically blocking my truck. We can't get plows through, sir. It's a sheet of ice. You go out there, you die. I sat in my truck, slamming my hands against the steering wheel until they bruised. I was helpless again. I sat in the cab of my truck, the engine idling, the heat blasting, but doing nothing to touch the cold in my bones. Every minute felt like an hour. I pictured the bus, tipped sideways in a ditch, heaters failing, snow burying the windows. I pictured Maya, scared, hugging her backpack, wondering where her dad was. I stared at the blockade of police lights ahead of me, debating if I should just ram through and take my chances. Jail be damned. 30 minutes passed. 40. I called the school hotline busy. I called the police non-emergency line busy. Then my phone buzzed, a text. Not from Clara, from an unknown number. It was a picture. It was grainy, dark, lit only by the flash, but it was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. It was the inside of a school bus. Kids were huddled in blankets, and there, in the middle of the aisle, was a woman in a heavy parka, holding a flashlight in one hand and my daughter in the other. The caption read, "Got her. We're safe. We're waiting for the plows together." I put my head on the steering wheel and sobbed. I cried the kind of ugly, heaving tears that you hold back for years. It took another 2 hours for the plows to cut a path. When they finally let parents through to the staging area at a nearby church, I didn't run, I sprinted. I burst through the double doors of the community center, scanning the crowd of weeping parents and shell-shocked kids. And there they were, in the corner, sitting on a pile of gym mats. Maya was wrapped in a foil blanket, drinking hot cocoa. And Clara looked like a warrior. Her hair was wild, her face was scratched, but she was holding Maya like she was her own flesh and blood. Tess was there too, sketching pictures for the other scared kids, keeping them calm. "Daddy," Maya screamed, launching herself at me. I caught her, burying my face in her cold hair. "I got you, baby. I got you." I looked up at Clara over Maya's shoulder. She stood up, looking exhausted. I put Maya down and stepped toward Clara. I didn't say a word. I just grabbed her and kissed her. I kissed her in front of the principal, the cops, the parents, everyone. I kissed her like I was trying to breathe life back into myself. "You came back." I whispered against her forehead. "You drove into a blizzard." "I told you." She smiled weakly. "I'm your date." I show up. We drove back to my place in a convoy. The storm broke just as we pulled into the driveway, the moon coming out over the snow-covered barn. We got the kids settled. Maya and Tess curled up on the rug in front of the fireplace, exhausted. Clara and I stood in the kitchen. The adrenaline was fading, leaving us with the heavy reality of the situation. "You still have to go," I said quietly. "To Seattle." Clara looked at her hands. "Yeah, the job. Tess's school." About that, a voice came from the doorway. We turned. Tess was standing there, wrapped in a blanket. She looked terrified, but determined. She was holding a letter. "I didn't get into the school in Seattle," Tess said. her voice shaking. Clara frowned. What? Tess, we saw the acceptance email. The scholarship, I forged it, Tess said, tears spilling over. I made a fake email. I'm a graphic artist, remember? Why? Clara asked, stunned. Why would you do that? Because you were settling. Tess shouted, stepping into the room. You were going to stay at that dead-end job here forever just to take care of me. You were miserable. I thought if I made up a reason for us to move, you'd finally take that big job you deserve. I wanted to save you, Clara. But then she gestured to me. Then you met him. And for the first time in your life, you looked happy. And I ruined it. Clara stared at her sister. You lied to make me ambitious. I lied to get you unstuck. Tess sobbed. But now we're driving away from the only real thing you found. I don't want to go to Seattle. I got into the Institute of Arts right here in Minneapolis. I got a full ride. Clara. I hid the letter. The silence in the room was thick. Clara looked at Tess, then at me. Her whole reason for leaving the expensive school. The fresh start for her sister had just evaporated. So I said, stepping forward, my heart hammering against my ribs, you don't need the Seattle money for tuition. No, Tess said, wiping her eyes. And you? I looked at Clara. You're a senior director level manager? You handle logistics, operations, complex systems? Yes, Clara said, confused. That's what I do, my business, I said, gesturing around us. It's growing, fast. Andre is a great craftsman, but he's terrible with money. We're losing contracts because we're disorganized. We've been looking for a CFO/operations manager for 6 months. I can't pay you Seattle money. Not yet, but I can pay you enough, and I can offer you equity. A partnership. Clara looked at me, her mouth slightly open. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a life, I said. I'm offering you a reason to stay that isn't just about romance. It's about respect. You're brilliant, Clara. You saved my daughter today because you're decisive and brave. I need that in my company, and I need that in my heart. I took her hands. Don't go to Seattle. Stay here. Build this with me. Let's make this huge. Clara looked at Tess. Tess nodded vigorously, a goofy smile on her face. Clara looked at the living room where Maya was sleeping. Then she looked at me. I'm going to need a corner office, she said. A smile breaking through the exhaustion. You can have the whole barn. I laughed. 1 year later, I walked into the Ember and Oak. It was Christmas Eve. The place was decorated with holly and gold ribbon. I walked to the corner table. Clara was already there. She was wearing the emerald green scarf, but she wasn't alone. Maya and Tess were there, too, laughing at something Andre was showing them on his phone. We were a table of 5 now. I sat down and took Clara's hand. The business had doubled in the last year. Thanks to her, the chaos of our lives had settled into a beautiful, loud, messy rhythm. You're late, she teased. Kissing my cheek. I was picking something up, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. I'd made it myself in the shop. Cherry wood, inlaid with pearl. I put it on the table. The chatter stopped. Tess gasped. Maya's eyes went wide. Clara, I said, my voice steady this time. You walked through a blizzard for a stranger. You drove into a storm for a child that wasn't yours. You saved me in every way a person can be saved. I love you. I love us. I opened the box. The ring inside wasn't a massive diamond. It was a vintage sapphire, deep blue like the winter sky. Will you be my date forever? Clara looked at the ring, then at the girls, then at me. She didn't cry. She beamed. She radiated light. I promise, she said. And she kissed me. So, here we are. A family built on mistakes, blizzards, lies, and second chances. I used to think tragedy defined me. I used to think the cold was all there was. But I learned something important that winter. We all have storms. We all have moments where we're stuck on the highway, freezing and alone. But you have to keep your eyes open. You have to look for the person willing to walk through the snow to find you. And when you find them, you don't let them drive away. What about you guys? Have you ever had a mistake turn into the best thing that ever happened to you? Or have you ever had to fight through a storm to get to the one you love? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to hear it. I'm Julian, and I'm gonna go help my wife. Yeah, my wife put the star on the tree. Merry Christmas, everyone.